Anyone can sit, please. Yes, everyone can join. We can make the circle bigger. Yeah, great. Yeah, Grady, maybe. Yeah, make some room over there. Yeah. Actually, I'll go around this way so we can just set it. I can join.
There are no questions I would like to ask. So what motivated your talk? Like why? I understand all those quotes from the spiritual leaders. Coincidentally, they're most Buddhist leaders. So how did you connect them with this presentation about compassion? How did you run into those quotes?
I guess because I was thinking about, okay, what kind of strategies and techniques do I have to share with folks? And I was like, I'm not really sure that I have anything specific that's been working. I feel like I've been failing a lot, actually.
Well, that's good. That's good.
And so what can I offer? And I would spend an hour here and there in the last few weeks. I would just sit down and start making notes and what am I going to talk about? What do I have to offer? How can I be of service in this situation? And I ended up with just pages of rambling notes and stuff, still nothing really coherent. And then and I had been reading all these books because I've been going through some emotional stuff myself, and these books have been really helpful for me. And so I think it was just last 2 nights ago maybe, I was like, oh, maybe this is the structure. I'll just pull out things that have been resonating with me and talk about how they're connected to my experience as a teacher.
And I should probably explain the reason for my question, because my studies of compassion come from a Buddhist background, and I do study and discuss expressions of compassion in our daily life. And very often people have those ideas of expressing compassion, and then the other people in the group, everybody highly spiritual, very sensitive, they say, no, this is actually silly. Just to give an example, would it be compassionate to simply give all students an A? Is it compassionate? No. But some people have this concept that we are compassionate, so you just give everybody what they want. No, it's much more complicated. Actually, Buddhism has a lot of good strategies for building up this sensitivity and this attention that you mentioned at the beginning. Actually,
I was going to add on top of it that in a meta level, recursive as math is, you're being compassionate to yourself. You're demonstrating, for example, just to my thing from yesterday, trust that it will work. That this, you're trying to bring into the world a new thing, a new type of talk that you maybe never gave before. It's not like you're going to do this. It's not like just another talk.
It's a lot
you wanted it to be research, right? And you're not sure. Will it actually hold water?
Right. Yeah, you want to talk about systems of quadratic forms that define non-singular varieties in the algebraic closure over a finite field? You're there, and then you're like, and love.
Right, but then who are you speaking to?
Exactly.
You can say things because they can be easy to you to say, but then no one actually is listening.
Trust me, I know that.
I thought about that trust thing a lot.
I thought your talk modeled what you do with your students when you show your compassion, okay? And the vulnerability that you show in your confession that you do not know meets the student's negatives wherever they are in the learning context. I would say that what you did prior to presenting was impassioned, meaning your compassion was implicit within you. The other thing I want to say is that throughout the discussion we talked about trust in relation to math, trusting yourself, trusting the process, and so forth. And I see trust as a toleration of a certain level of uncertainty. Okay, trust doesn't have any meaning without uncertainty. In your case, what blessed me is that because my question about trust was, how do you manage that? Given that it's there, how do you process it so that you can then act on your own impassion Because the previous speaker earlier talked about compassion is empathy plus action. Your empathy for yourself was then able to act because you had managed your uncertainty. And you went on and did it. And I felt that. And that's what
It'll be okay to speak slowly, to let people do not read, to have
Yes,
them read.
yes,
I
yes.
mean, these are, things that we can all do as teachers in the classroom, for example. We don't, and it's so uncomfortable, right? But it's so generative when you use space. Thank you for demonstrating.
I have a question. So what motivates you to read works in psychology?
That's a great question. So I definitely wouldn't consider myself like an armchair psychologist, but I think when I notice things that are happening in the classroom, I am trying to get inside students' heads. And it's fascinating to me that students are thinking so differently from how I think about things in math or in life. And so kind of digging into some of that psychology research is just like this topic of like, how do others think? How is that different from me? And how do others learn? Because I want my students to learn, so how are they learning? So that's kind of what led me to look at this topic.
I entirely understand. Yeah, connect with that because I love reading psychology and I loved it since I was a teenager. And then I had a Buddhist practice since I was a teenager. And then at some point, as a professional mathematician, I started asking myself, so how they connect those things? And there must be some connection. But you really about psychology, like how people think, how people learn, personality types, how Gustav Jung says that we have, everybody has a different type of gathering information, processing information, executing, making decisions, executing, and giving yourself feedback, good or bad. But if we can figure out the type our students have, it's much easier to kind of cluster them up and understand how they are going to process and what we need to do to help them in their own path. Entirely connected.
I mean, to add to that, part of the reason we are here is because it's a shame, really, that we as mathematicians aren't taught to inquire into how people learn, right? We're supposed to facilitate learning. We're not even inquiring into our own learning. It's not about what you learn, but like the very fact that you even learn is, what changes from when you didn't know it? Like what happens in the aha moment? Or sometimes it's an obvious aha moment, sometimes it's more gradual, and then you didn't know when it happened, but you know it happened, But like, why don't you inquire into that? I mean, I come at it thinking that it is part of mathematics, actually, what happens. It is itself a mathematical process in some ways, right? It can be, just because for me, mathematics is a language of describing the world, that I've grown into from when I was very young. So, in that sense, I can imagine understanding in a mathematical way, and then try to, apply it in the situations I find myself daily in, right? So.
I think that somebody previously mentioned about you have to trust yourself. You have to trust your self-narrative. So part of the work of a mathematician is actually build up the trust of your own self-narrative and teach your students the same thing. And without that, there's no research in mathematics. So entirely we're doing compassion for ourselves and for the students. I was about to ask, so you go to different classes, different colleges?
I do. It is, I'm telling you,
Yes.
it is so fun.
Are you
Oh,
learning? What did you learn?
Oh, what did I learn for you? First of all, we would need about 12 hours for that, but no, I guess it was really, it's not that I believed that there was only one way to do things. I have never believed that. That is not the thing. But I still am constantly struck by just the number of ways, big and small, that people have sort of found to connect with their students and to do things that I had never even imagined. So this is like a trivial, superficial example, but I'm visiting a faculty member, and she said to me, one of her her biggest concerns